It seems that Manchester United are going for Norwegian midfielder Sander Berge this summer. What kind of player is he and how does he fit in the Manchester United setup? Let's analyze. All right, so let's start with a brief overview of Sander Berge. So definitely a defensive midfielder, plays for Burnley, previously of Sheffield United and Genk in Belgium. 26-year-old, 195 centimeter tall, so definitely not a small guy. I would describe him as an anchorman, a classic defensive midfield number 6. Here you can compare his heat map to that of Casemiro. Obviously Casemiro's is more intense, there's more red because he plays for Manchester United. We have more of the ball, therefore he touches the ball more. But both of them, as you can see, they perform similar roles within their respective teams. His strengths, and of course I'm going to back this up with evidence in the video analysis segment, so please stick around for that one. Man marking, Berge is excellent when it comes to taking certain players out of the game and locking up certain areas of the pitch. His defensive game is not built on bombastic tackling, but rather on astute positioning. Long passes, he's very good at distribution, and of course beating the press, and I'm going to show you how he does that in a minute. One of his weaknesses, and here I should have added an asterisk next to pace, because I'm not saying that he's slow. He's by no means slow, he's got decent pace. But it's just that Burnley, every time I watch them, they defend mainly deep and compact, right? And that kind of positioning tends to favor tall players like Berge. But so far, I haven't seen him in a situation where he plays for a team that plays a high defensive line, because that is the ambition for Manchester United under Erik ten Hag. Okay, we want to play high up the pitch, we want to play in the opposition's half, which means that we need pacey players whenever the opposition breaks away in a counter-attack. And so the jury is out on whether Berge does have the pace to make sure that we get the protection that we need. But of course, in the video analysis segment, I'm going to show you that there are hints that this may not be a weakness. But to me, it just remains a question mark. Anyway, injury risk assessment. His last injury was a hamstring injury back in the 21-22 season. Of course, after that, he played a whole season in the Championship with Sheffield United. Those are long, grueling, hard seasons. You know, they play 46 games, and he didn't pick up any injuries, and he played most of the games. And then, of course, last season at Burnley, playing in the Premiership, Burnley also under company, they play a high octane, high intensity game, and yet he didn't pick up any injuries. So again, risk is very minimal, but just like Lenny Yoro, you know, you're always at a risk of picking up an injury, mainly if it's a contact injury. But overall, his risk assessment shows that Berge is quite a solid player. Okay, so let's move on to the video analysis. Okay, now, first let me just start by saying that last season I watched 3 games with Sander Berge, just to watch him as a player, because I really rate him. I really like this player. I was going to make a video about him before, but I am really surprised that Manchester United went in for him, not because the player is not good, but just because that it's quite a bold move from Ineos to actually go for a player like this. But anyway, I watched him against Arsenal, Fulham, and Spurs, and this is where these highlights are from. So anyway, let's pay attention. So here, well, we have Sander Berge over here, and obviously he's tasked with marking both Declan Rice, who's behind my logo, and Zinchenko over here. So he's tasked with marking 2 players, because as you know, Arsenal, not only is he tasked by marking the player who plays on their the left side of their midfield, which is Declan Rice, but also we know that Zinchenko just drops inside into the midfield from the left back position, and then Martinelli, which we're gonna see later, who likes to cut inside from the left. So he was quite busy, and yet, again, he knows how to position himself in a situation where he can mark 2 different zones, basically 2 players within his zone, as he did here with Declan Rice and Zinchenko. Very good defending, from him. Here again, he's gonna show one of his key attributes, again, like I said, which is man marking, just keeping an eye on dangerous players and making sure that he nullifies the threat. And he's gonna do the same thing here with Martinelli. Obviously he identifies the threat, he follows him, and then he wins the race, and then throw in for Arsenal. That's very good. He's very good at defending these half spaces over here. Again, speaking of half spaces, he understands, here is Berge over here, he understands that this area right here, as you can see, this area right here is one of the most dangerous areas in the modern game, and yet he's there to block off the space and then intercept the ball. This was against Fulham, and this is what I talked about when I talked about his weakness and pace as being a potential weakness. Here he's proven me wrong a little bit, because this is the situation I was talking about. So Burnley are committed forward, Fulham are breaking out in a counter-attack, and yet Berge is there to win the ball. Excellent. And then here, again, same thing, just coming back from an offensive action to come in and provide protection for his teammates. Okay, now here is another aspect of Berge that is extremely underrated, and it's his playmaking and his distribution ability. So here, this area is empty. He needs to come in because if they want to build up from the back, they need the number 6 player who drop into this position. He comes in, obviously. And then what I like about this is, look, so I magnified his face because he's assessing his option. And that's very good. Every playmaker needs that. You have to know what you're going to do next, and you have to lift your head and always assess your options. He identifies the best option, and it is the best option. And that's a beautiful, sweet pass with a nice swerve. You saw that? Curled, amazing pass. And then he launches an attack for his teammate. Same thing here. He positions himself in an area where he cannot be marked. And then again, as you can see, he is looking, assessing his options. And look at that, before he receives the ball. Because the mistake that a lot of players make, and that's how you distinguish between top players and good players, is that good players, they wait until they receive the ball, until they control it, before they start thinking, what am I going to do with it next? But top players, they always assess their options before they get the ball. By the time they get it, they already know what their next move is. Therefore, they act. Their acting speed is actually much higher than the players around them. So here he assesses his option, and then he's very good at playing with the game in front of him, and then beautiful pass, beautifully timed, beautifully weighted into this space over here. Okay, now here, Fulham, who are a team who really love to press high and aggressively. Here they have laid a trap for Burnley. As you can see, 4 players against 4 Burnley players, but then the one who's gonna save them is, of course, Berge over here. So he comes in deep and then quickly just lays off the pass, but he knows now that there is this space, so he's gonna exploit it. He receives the ball into his space and then gets the ball out, gets a free kick for Burnley here. Of course, Fulham didn't have an option. This is Palina, by the way. It's either he breaks off the attack and gives Burnley a free kick. He got a yellow card for this one. Or it's going to be like 3v4 for Burnley and potentially a chance to score a goal. So again, beautiful from Berge to get the ball out and to let his team breathe a little bit from the high pressing trap that Fulham have laid to them. Then in the same game, in fact, it was just a few minutes later, Berge finds himself in the situation where he scores a beautiful goal, so identifies that there is a space for him to exploit. If I remember, Michael Carrick, who I think Berge really reminds me of, he scored a goal similar to this against QPR back in the day. I think 2008, 2009. Again, just drove with the ball forward and then a shot into the low corner. And Berge really reminds me of Michael Carrick a lot. Okay, beautiful goal. And here, this sequence, this is such an amazing sequence, by the way. When I saw it, when I was watching, this was against Spurs, I was just screaming because I was like, whoa, this is amazing. Look what he does. He receives the ball and then on the turn, beautifully just goes in. Here, tenacity, just make sure that he wins every duel. And then here, what I like about this sequence right here is that most players would have played it safely, which is just play a through ball to this player right here. But no, this is what Berge is gonna do. High IQ player right here. And then comes inside, and then beautifully, this opens up a new passing lane for him, a very dangerous passing lane for him. He sees the number 34, beautiful through ball, and then of course, beautiful goal for Burnley. What a player Sander Berge is. All right, now let's talk about this comment by one of my viewers because it highlights 2 key points that I want to talk about. All right, so Nomad Joe 0323, gotta love those usernames, said, I don't know why so many people are already dissing this guy because he would be coming from Burnley. He'd be a great stopgap until Collier is ready. All right, the first point, Manchester United signing players from Burnley. I think that this argument has such an easy and obvious rebuttal, which is Liverpool, when they were building their amazing Champions League and title-winning squad. They needed a left back and they needed a central midfielder. Who did they go for? They went for Robertson and Wijnaldum, both of whom in the same season. They got relegated with Hull and Newcastle respectively. And of course, Wijnaldum became one of the best central midfielders in the world. And of course, Robertson became one of, if not at that time, the best left back in the world. When you are a big club like Manchester United, there are 2 ways you can recruit players, okay? First, you can just look at players based on their performances, okay? But the problem with this is that the players are gonna be expensive and there is no guarantee that they're gonna transfer those performances to Manchester United. Case in point, Jadon Sancho. And the second method is actually to look when nobody else is looking, to look for underrated and undervalued players like Wijnaldum and Robertson. And every club has to have a strategy that combines these 2 methods. If you only focus on one, it's not going to be a successful strategy. Now, the second point about Collier, I talked about this in my Collier video. I think that when you look at Erik ten Hag when it comes to youth development, he does have a pattern. He likes to have young players involved in the periphery of the first team for a season or so, and then the next season, that's when they get involved consistently. For example, Garnacho, he started off with Ragnick. His first season under Erik ten Hag, we didn't see much of him, but of course he scored that goal against Fulham right before the World Cup, actually. And then second half of the season, he was involved more. And then last season, he was, of course, a key player for us. Same thing with Kobbie Mainoo. Under Ralf Ragnick, we didn't hear much about him. Under Erik ten Hag, he was on the bench a few times. I think he played about 10 minutes against Charlton in the Carabao Cup. So he was on the periphery of the first team. But of course, we knew that Erik ten Hag had plans for him. And I think that this season, that's going to be Harry Amas and Toby Collier. But I think that for both of them, this season would be too soon. And young players need time to develop and to work on their skills in order for them to be ready for first team football. If you just throw them when they are not ready, that's just going to be counterproductive. And so this is where a player like Sander Berge comes in, because he just can't take that pressure off of someone like Toby Collier, because if you bring him in, he's going to just slot in seamlessly alongside Kobbie Mainoo and Bruno Fernandes. And then you still have players like Mason Mount, Casemiro if you don't sell him, Christian Eriksen. Maybe we're going to go back for Amrabat, who knows. But we're going to have other midfielders acting as players in depth alongside Toby Collier as well. So maybe if he has a season where he has, I don't know, 10 to 15 appearances, then next season he's going to be ready to take on the mantle. And someone like Sander Berge could be just the right player to take that pressure off. And the third point, of course, is that I understand that a player like Sander Berge is not really an exciting signing. However, it's a low-risk signing. And we spent a lot on Lenioro, Xerxes, and we are looking at bringing in De Ligt and Mazraoui as well. We don't have that much money to spend a lot of money on an elite midfielder. Plus, the central midfield market this season is kind of underwhelming. There are not a lot of options, and those that are available are quite overpriced. So bringing in a player like Sander Berge, he can do a job for us this season, and then next season we can go and spend more money on an elite midfielder. So I think that Sander Berge would be an amazing sign-in for us this season. He's just the right type of sign-in for us. Like I said earlier in the video, he's a player that I highly rate, but I never thought that Manchester United would go for him, not because he is an underwhelming option, but because it takes a lot of boldness and bravery from an outside thinking outside the box, from the Manchester United hierarchy to identify and go for players like that. So let me know in the comment section, what do you think about Sander Berge? Would you prefer a different player? Until next time, cheers.